are back at it. Another episode of You're Already Accepted, a community rewatch. I'm Jonathan. That's Ethan. What's up, Ethan?
How's it going, Jonathan?
You know how it is, man. Not bad. Not bad. We just out here, just watch a little community, just
another week of rewatch, man. These are some good episodes. I'm excited to get into it.
I want to say, yeah, I think we'll probably kind of feel sort of similar about these episodes, but let's get into it. First up, we got Debate 109. And after that, we are looking at Environmental Science, another great episode from the first season. So let's get into it. We're going to start up with A+ scenes. Britta, after Pierce's long annoying joke in the beginning, she goes off and says, "I got a joke for you. A doddering old fool walks into a bar and tells a stupid joke, and I crush his windpipe with a 3-ring biter." And Shirley goes, "I don't get it." The fake versions of the Greendale 7 and Abed's film, for some reason, like Troy's especially, just got me cracking up. Like it's just like a Coolio ripoff. That just got me going.
Oh, I agree. Probably best part of this episode.
So this is like a short little thing, and it kind of goes back to last week with like Joel McHale's football past, but Jeff just completely jukes out the dean and Professor Whitman and Annie when they're trying to stop him in the hallway, and the way he does it too is so great because all he does is just take a step to the right. He doesn't even like shimmy his shoulders or anything. He just like nah. It just cuts him back. And I don't know. I think since we're both football fans, we just appreciate a good juke anywhere we can get it. So, and then the dive to the kiss during the debate. I kind of forgot about that. Like in the midst of the debate, I was like, oh wow, are they actually going to win? Are they going to lose? What's going to happen? And just how I can't remember the guy's name. Do you remember the dude in the wheelchair?
Simmons.
Thank just the drama of just like him slightly pushing his cart for like and it just flying and having Jeff catch him and like that swing the debate, and then Annie coming back and kissing Jeff, just proving her point. Like so good.
So I'll go on bouncing off that. Like I think that whole final debate sequence, like that part in particular is great. But like even before that, the lead up of you have this really intense music, and there's this montage of them going back and forth, and there's these rebuttals, and you kind of like see like each person like saying something really really weird that has to do with whether man is evil or good, and then there's like this really tense moment. Abed's like commentating on it, and then Simmons throws himself at Jeff, which kind of culminates the scene. And then as you mentioned, Annie kissing Jeff. I think that whole sequence is probably one of my favorite like whole scenes from this first season, just because I think it's a really good epitome of this show in general, and the kind of feeling you get of like, okay, this is kind of like ridiculous, but it's also like enjoyable to watch. And you kind of get a really good feeling into the characters of who each person is. When we get Annie being the smart, studious one, she knows what she's doing. We kind of get, the Jeff who's interested in Annie, but is kind of still trying to figure out what he wants. We get Abed and the whole study group as they're watching this. And I think that's a really fun sequence. And then it culminates at the end of that when they win the debate with the song Home by Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, which is a great song. I love it. I love that they use it. There's not probably a more like quintessential late 2000s, early 2010 song for them to use in this episode, but it works for me. I really appreciate that scene in general. Yeah, I mean, this is a good episode. I kind of forgot there's some really good moments that rewatching this. I don't remember when I watched this initially, but like rewatching it, they made me laugh. I really enjoyed this episode. Study group, I think that's probably the best part of this episode. And yeah, Troy, like his doppelganger is like probably like a 35-year-old guy. Doesn't it's just I wish we had more of the fake study group, which actually I think I looked. There's like some web episodes you can find that like are little short mini shows like with the fake cast. So I thought that was kind of fun. Yeah, there's another good line too by Whitman, who I think once again kind of is underrated character, and I think he kind of has some really, really good moments with the very little screen time that he gets in this episode. But he's talking to Jeff during their first debate, and he says a little trick for achieving the proper competitive mindset. I always envision the opponent having aggressive sex with my mother. And it's just the delivery of that line, because it comes out of nowhere. And it's not like we've only seen Whitman once before in the show, and he was the like sees the day character with in that episode with Jeff. It doesn't really seem like something that a guy like him would say, but I don't know. It comes out of nowhere. It really hits you. I think it made me laugh again, made me chuckle. And then a final line that it's kind of really has no importance for this episode, but it's just a great Troy line is he and Britta are walking into the library and Shirley and Abed, I think, are there. And you just hear Troy say, "No, you're right. My feet are long and stupid." He's like crying. And that's like what Abed is predicting, that Troy would be crying. It's just, there's a lot of great Troy lines. He's got some lines where you're like, okay, Troy is kind of like still really naive, really like just kind of almost like a little kid where like, I think he's a smart guy, but like he gets his feelings hurt really easily. And like, he's like, I think he thinks he's hot stuff, but like deep down, like he's still kind of a sensitive guy. And I just wish we could see like what led up to that, him saying that. But I think the fact that we don't see that conversation that him and Britta have, we don't know why they're talking about his feet. We just get that line. I don't know. It's a funny, like one-off line that doesn't really have any impact on the rest of the episode, but the way that Donald Glover delivers that line, I think is just great comedic acting by him. And
no, you're right in the sense of like, it definitely feels that Troy was like raised in some sort of bubble, which again, we kind of get that like idea through what we already know about the past about his past at this point with him being an athlete and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a super hilarious line, and just the way he acts out. He's like, "You're right. My feet are long and stupid. You can't take that." Like just the way he acts that out is just so perfect, and like, he does make it like super personal, and the whole like that whole little bit too with Britta trying to quit smoking, I thought was just great. Like just the way they used that, and they're like, "Yeah, you should probably keep smoking." Like,
nice little callback to like the first episode too. I remember we talked about that in our pilot. Like, there's that scene where Jeff goes outside and she says that, "You caught me. I'm smoking," and it's a nice little callback. They don't mention her smoking habit a lot throughout the show, but this episode uses that little callback, and it's a nice little B plot for this episode.
For leading the class, I have Annie. Yeah, like, I mean, I think everyone's performances in this episode's good, but I just feel like Annie actually grows the most. And it's not like in any like huge way, but it's just that little way where Jeff is talking to her. It's like, hey, you gotta like, you're so focused on, point A to point B and trying to do it by the book that like you need to like loosen up a little bit, show a little motion, have a little pathos. And so just that little moment, I feel like she grows the most out of anybody in this episode. But I mean, all the performances are strong.
No, I definitely agree. I think Annie is my pick as well for this one. I agree. I think that this episode really does a lot for her character in terms of the growth. And we've talked about this before in some previous episodes, or I've mentioned it, where we kind of have like an Annie in the first couple episodes who's still very much trying to get past her, her previous experiences in high school. She's still kind of got that high school student mentality. And I think she's trying to move past that, but she just can't let go of her past self. And she needs to grow up and like become her own person in college. And I really think this episode is a great stepping stone for her on that path. We really start to see her chemistry with Jeff blossom as well. And, the relationship starts to kind of go from being just in the study group and being friends, like a little bit more beyond platonic, but which, I don't know. I go back and forth on. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think that the like Jeff and Annie dynamic is okay? Are you a fan of it, or are you kind of like, no, let's not? Because I mean, he's older than her. I love Annie. I love Jeff, but the more you think about it, I don't know. The relationship is odd. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Jeff and Annie?
All right. So I thought a lot about this. So, okay. I get it in the sense of, and you can probably relate to this personally. I know I've been in situations where whatever the gap is, whether it's, racial or age or whatever like the situational gap is, the more time you spend with somebody, the less that gap matters. And so in this case, we're talking about the age gap between Jeff and Annie. And again, we know that Jeff is about twice her age. Like I also don't know that in like directly or whatever fact for fact, there's probably somebody's done the internet research and figured all that out. But let's say Jeff is roughly twice Annie's age. And the thing I think about is like, yes, I get it that like, okay, they spent more time together, so that gap matters less. But I feel like that I feel like that would still be in the back, or not in the back of their minds, but in the front of their minds, in the sense of, oh, I'm talking to someone who just left high school. Oh, I'm talking to somebody who's, in their mid 30s and already had a career. And so it for me, it feels a little too soon because it feels like, oh, because again, we're still in the first fall semester, right? Like, how long have they been friends? I don't know. Like maybe a few weeks, to truly become friends. Um, so I'm struggling with that there, and I feel like they're not. I feel like they're not in the place to create like a flirtatious moment. And I get it, like it's TV, we're having fun, where it's about kind of over projecting or hyperbole, creating a little hyperbole. I get it, I feel that, but for me, it's like, I just I feel like this episode should have just been a good friendship moment for them because they really haven't had like a really strong friendship moment, I feel like, in this series yet. So I feel like this should have just been their connection of like, hey, okay, Annie and I are friends, and that's good, and we know she's helped me, I'm helping her, all that. So I don't like the romantic angle for them yet.
Yeah, I guess I mean, maybe later on in the show, once we really, again, like we see the relationship get a lot stronger. We see the study group grow a lot closer. I guess I could see it in later seasons, but there's something about the age difference that I just can't get past. I mean, the first time you watch the show, like I don't think you really realize it, but then they eventually later on in the show, they start to bring up Jeff's age more. And there's there's the GI Jeff episode where they should reveal he's actually older than he's letting on. But and which I know this is a really hot topic among like community watchers and fans of like, there was, especially when the show was on, I know there was like a big kind of like, you're either for Jeff and Annie or like you're really against it. And like Dane Harmon was notoriously kind of like pushing both sides. Cause like there's the episode that I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but like there's I think it's the bottle episode where there's like that Sarah McLachlan song that plays with like the montage of like Jeff and Annie moments, like kind of being flirtatious. And like, there's like a whole in joke about like, well, you could do that for anybody. You could do it for Pierce and Abed. And then like it shows them as well. So like, that's like Dan Harmon addressing the viewers of the show, like within the show. He's kind of like breaking the fourth wall because there was a big push for a lot of their fans that wanted Jeff and Annie to be together in a date. I don't know. It's a big topic, I know, of discussion among fans. And watching this episode, I kind of had to reevaluate my take on it. I used to not really mind it that much, but I don't know. Maybe as we rewatch this, I'll change my mind. But I don't think it's, I don't know. I just don't think it ages well, or I don't know. I don't like the dynamic, I guess. I like Annie and Jeff's friendship, but it's just, this wouldn't work in any other show. If there was an age gap like this, it would be a big deal. So I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about this more as the show goes on and we start to see it more, but I thought it was worth bringing up, now since we get the first kiss between them.
No, and I like how you mentioned that, like with other shows, how this would have looked, and they would have like pointed it out more in other shows. And I think that's one of the signs of maturity of this show is that like they don't really talk about it that much. And because again, like, I've known guys and girls who have created relationships like romantically with like older people and like just unexpectedly, not like, oh, I look for that or I'm a cougar or whatever. It's just like, oh, this kind of happened, and that's how life is. Life just kind of happens sometimes. And so like I do get it, and again, they would be a great, but it's like there's that too where I'm like, I'm not sure how great of a couple they would be in a lot of ways. And so it's, I don't know. But again, maybe there's like, that's kind of the point of it, is just like these things just kind of happen. It's not really supposed to necessarily make sense, but you feel the way you feel. And like, okay, I can be on board with that. For extra credit, my only thing was on Choice Computer, instead of like an Apple logo, which I'm assuming that's what they were trying to copy, there was like a bomb logo, which I thought was kind of funny. And like, I always just try to look for like shows that try to avoid like little copyright issues like that. I just think it's funny. Like with like The Simpsons, they have Maple instead of like Apple, like, just like, instead of like that. I remember, I think it was on, gosh, was it Victorious? That was a Disney show, right? Or not Disney, Nickelodeon show,
A
right? Victorious.
Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I think they had instead of like an Apple phone, they had like a Pear phone. I think it was on that show where like yeah they did like stuff like that, and so. But I just think it's funny to see how shows like avoid copyright stuff like that or change company names.
Yeah, I think it was Victorious and iCarly as well, which we get an iCarly joke in this, so it's kind of funny. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's ever a show where Apple like lets their products be used. I can't think of a show besides like the Apple TV like shows that they've produced, like the morning show where they use Apple products. Like you can tell it's Apple. I think Apple must be really picky about their logo being used. There's a couple of trivia notes that I learned when I was looking at the IMDb for this page or for this episode. Really interesting fact for this episode was that when they were shooting the debate scene, they were using like a local gym because of a possible like active shooter while like the cast and crew were in there filming. So they got put on lockdown, which was like, that's insane. They didn't say anything more about like if it was actually a shooter. I think it probably was like a false alarm, but that's crazy. And then I was looking like, so we talked about the fake study group earlier and the actors that Abed like casts for them in his movie. And I went back and looked because I was curious, like if any of them were any like popular, like if they had big careers. And true to like the show, none of them really are famous actors. Like they're all kind of unknown people, which kind of I think adds to like the humor and that they're just these random people playing the study group. Most of them have pretty small filmographies. The only one that really had like a notable list of like appearances was the fake Troy, who we talked about earlier. His actor's name is LeJohn, like just LeJohn, just one name. And he's mainly been like a background character in like Pirates of the Caribbean, Fast and Furious. He was in The Dark Knight Rises. It's like he's had like a couple of like that guy background roles, but everybody else was pretty much like one or two shows outside of like this episode of Community. And then one other thing, I don't know if this like goes here, like where you want to talk about this, but I have like a weird thing I noticed was, okay, so did Simmons, the wheelchair guy, did he go to school with Annie? Because he makes fun of her, like sings like the Annie Adderall little song about her and like kind of teases her about that. It's like, was he in school with her? Like, how did he know about her Annie Adderall like identity, or is she just famous like around that area for being like the girl that had an Adderall addiction? Because I thought that was odd that like maybe they went to high school together or something, but they don't really like talk any more about like was there a rivalry between them in high school or something? Did you notice that, or do you think that's just a coincidence? Or
No, that's a good question. Honestly, this just kind of came to me, but if they would have went to high school together, I think the storyline should have been that like they dated in high school because like they both seem kind of losers. And like obviously if you're like in debate, like the fact of the matter is I didn't know any cool kids in debate when I was in high school. So like I think it would have been kind of funny if like they both went to the same high school, and they used to date too, and they were like kind of nerds together. But no, I don't think, at least the implication I don't think was that Simmons and Annie went to the same school. But I could see that like being like a big story because like it's like, oh, potential, what's the term I'm thinking of? Potential valedictorian. Yeah, potential valedictorian is caught with a bunch of narcotics, and I mean I could see that being like a big story around. And like since they're debaters, they just do a lot of research, little research on your opponent kind of thing, trying to get in their head. So I could see that.
Yeah,
but that is funny. That's a good question.
Yeah. All right, you convinced me.
So for this episode overall, I remember in the first like 5 minutes, like laughing out loud multiple times. And I think for me, the second half of the episode was fine. And it was entertaining. Like we talked about the debate, like that was fun, but I didn't catch myself laughing that much. And like, for me, when I think of a great, especially when it's a sitcom, like I want to laugh, I mean, I'm there to not, yes, I want to be entertained. But I'm entertained by a lot of TV, but I want to laugh. And so for me, this was like probably a C tier, 7 out of 10 kind of episode overall, like pretty fun. Another like thing that just kind of I noticed and it was kind of frustrating, but they do it in the next episode too, is Pierce just kind of involving himself in like the problems of one of the members of the group. And this time it's Britta with the whole like anti-smoking thing. And well, it's just kind of funny to me because like he hasn't been successful besides the thing with Troy where he like taught Troy how to sneeze, which, I mean, they kind of just played that off as a bit, not like as like a big thing. But, you know, when he tried to help Britta with Vaughn, he ends up just joining the band and and making more fun of Britta. And then when he tries to help Annie with a song for the Luis Guzman statue, he just ends up ripping off a song and you know, whatever, which is again hilarious. But it's just kind of funny that they let him help. And I get it. Like, you know, the writers are probably just like trying to figure out something for Pierce to do that week, and like that's going to be kind of his role. But it was just like, okay, Pierce is going to help again and probably screw this up. So,
no, that's a good point. There's kind of a little like recipe they follow in a couple of these episodes with Pierce. Like, all right, what plot can we put Pierce in this week? Well, we need one of the side characters in there to interact with Pierce, so we'll have him help them with something. I think it's interesting that they use Pierce in that way because he actually kind of shows like a nice side where like I feel like in these past, like this episode, the next one especially, like he's actually pretty calm and like for the most part, he's not really super like racist or like sexist. He's pretty like tame compared to like the Pierce we see throughout the rest of the show. So it's kind of interesting that they go that way with him a little bit in this kind of portion of the first season. I think the plot with him and Britta is pretty good. I would agree with you. I think this episode's a solid 7 out of 10. It's not probably my top 10 of episodes, but I'd say for the first season episode, like I think there's some good moments. I think there's some good lines. We talked about some of the, you know, the fake study group. I really like that final debate scene. I think it's really well done. So there's some good things in here. I had a couple like nitpicks. So one small one, but I thought I should bring it up. Jeff's ugly socks. I know there's a joke in there that Pierce like makes fun of Jeff and says like your shirt's trying to escape through your pants. But those socks, I feel like they solely existed for them to make that joke. And like that wasn't even really that funny of a joke. Like Jeff wouldn't ever wear something like that. I know they're kind of going for like the he's living out of his car still possibly, or like kind of still trying to get back on his feet. So like maybe he's not making the best fashion choices. Like his shirt and his socks match. So he obviously consciously made the decision to wear those. And like the fact that he even owns those socks, I don't know. I think it's just a travesty anyway. Those socks are disgusting. And somebody like him wouldn't wear those. But I hate that. I don't know, that joke just kind of fell flat for me because I feel like it's almost like somebody went back to the clothing, like one of the crew members for the show went back to like the costume section and was like, hey, we found these socks. We should use these in the show somehow. And then they put them on Jeff and like, then they just like thought of that joke right there. Like it basically exists for that one line, which isn't even that funny. So small nitpick, but something I kind of cringed at, was rolling my eyes. And then another line that from this episode that I also wasn't a fan of just because it didn't work. It wasn't funny to me. I just thought it really didn't fit the rest of the show. There's a part where he and Annie are talking early in the episode and they're talking about, she's saying they need to go study and everything and spend all night studying. And Jeff says, no, who am I? iCarly? Which I think it's not a very, that joke doesn't make sense to me because I watched iCarly like growing up. I was a part of that generation. That joke that doesn't make any sense because what is he trying to get at? Like it feels like the writers of this show had seen iCarly advertised, never watched the show, just assumed it was, it's a kid's show. So it's about like, lesson of the week, do your homework, be good, like stay in school, don't do drugs kind of thing, which is not what the show is about. I mean, it's got some good moments. Like that's not what iCarly's about. I don't know. They could have like literally used any other show or like a lot of other shows if they wanted to use some kind of snarky retort for Jeff. And that joke was kind of like, it felt like there could have been a good payoff for it. And I thought the iCarly reference just didn't make sense because I don't know, maybe it's because I've seen the show and I think I know what he was trying to get at, but that's not what I would have used, I guess, if I could have rewritten that line.
Well, it seems like it's like used for reference. It's a reference for reference sake, which again, it's kind of funny. Like iCarly, it's so random. Like, oh, that's, funny, but yeah, it doesn't, knowing like the show of iCarly where like, okay, it's, this person who starts this web show and I guess, but like studying, like, like what's the connection exactly? So yeah, I agree with you. All right. On to environmental science, season 1, episode 10. Let's do it. A+ stuff, A+ lines, A+ scenes. The dean talking to him. the dean talking to his assistant. We need to redo these. Dean, we printed 5,000. We'll print 5,000 more. Not save a planet here.
It's a great line.
Annie and Pierce. I think it's Annie that's like, you have to get Chang to call off his homework, to call off all this homework. You're the one with the silver tongue, Jeff. And Pierce goes, yeah, go tongue Chang. Jeff, when he copies Pierce's joke when he enters the room, I mean that guy. I mean, guys, that guy gets any more nuts, he's gonna win a Grammy. And everyone's like, you are hilarious. You're funny, Jeff. Copying Pierce's jokes is so funny. I don't know why that got me so bad, but just got me rolling. And then Chang, this was I watched a compilation recently of like best community lines, jokes, whatever. And this was in it where Chang goes, "Ustedes están sucios." It means you are dirty. Still formal, but plural because while they're both dirty, neither are my friends. And it's like, yeah, he's not wrong in terms of Spanish.
I love the reactions in that scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chang breaking down in front of Jeff. I thought it was such good acting by Ken Jeong. He just goes like from like kind of having fun and then he just tears. I'm like, geez. Like just Ken Jeong's like just flipping that scene. I just thought was so good. And like his face was just so tragic in the midst of it. I'm like, ugh, geez, Chang, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, man.
And then Pierce tries to act like Jeff and gets a laugh when he's sitting in his chair. I just thought that was kind of funny. And I forgot to put this on there, but when Chang and Jeff are talking, and Chang is like talking about his wife, and he's like, we met at a salsa club, and you know how it is. You get a job, and just like, hey, and you stop salsa, and you stop going to salsa, and it's just like, oh. And like even in that short moment, we always talk about like just how this show works emotionally. Even in that short moment, I'm like, oh, I created like a mental picture of their whole relationship, and I'm like, oh, like just sad to see them like not work out so far. But
no, there's some. I agree. There's some good Chang scenes in this episode. There's some good Chang lines, some good Chang moments. But I've got a long list. I might have to cut this back because I had a lot of great moments and some lines that had me dying laughing again rewatching this. Like right off the bat, first scene, yeah, you mentioned the one with the dean and like reprint. We need 5,000 of these. I'm trying to save the planet. But like even before that, the dean announces the Green Week, and Pierce goes, "Oh, first we give a month to Black History, and now we're building 7 days on the Irish."
Yeah,
I was rolling. And then a good Chang one, Chang dragging Annie out of the classroom while she's still on her desk. And that opening, like cold open, that's just some good acting. There's really nothing said. He just pulls her out, like drags her desk out, and some great comedic acting by Jeong. Like, I feel like we're just beating a dead horse in this podcast. Like, we could just rename this the Ken Jeong like fan club podcast because like every week we talk about how great Ken Jeong is, but it's true. He's just great acting. Like, just his delivery of his lines, even when he's not talking, even his emotional acting. Like you mentioned him in that scene where he breaks down to Jeff. And just like goes from like happy to like sad. Like he just flips his emotions right there. Not a lot of actors that I feel like that could pull that off and could do that kind of like literally like within like a blink of an eye. Like they go from playing like the happy character that's joking around to like crying about his wife. But don't want to get too like emotional. I get right now. The dean watching the Dalmatian video. So I guess this is kind of goes into like trivia and things to notice later, but like that's like the first like there's a callback to that later on in the end of like season 1 and the like season 1 finale with like the Dalmatian, and so we kind of get a glimpse into the dean's Dalmatian fetish. But there's just that great like this better not awaken anything in me where he's watching that video and I see that line. That's honestly like there's a lot of great scenes from the show that have become like kind of mainstream. I see that one quoted a lot, especially like on Twitter and like Reddit. Like that line gets quoted a lot as like a meme. So kind of an iconic Dean, just 2 like 5-second clip of him kind of just being weird, but like it's just a funny look into his character. And then right after that, the Green Day reveal. I thought watching this when I first watched this episode, I must have slept through that scene or something. Like I just like ignored it because I didn't understand that joke when I first watched the show. And so when they show up later, I thought that was like the reveal. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of funny. But then I when I watched this again, like other times watching this, like I didn't realize that the band shows up right there in that scene with the Deans. Like that's just a great review of like, you think you're getting Green Day, and like there's all this confusion about like Greendale and like the Dean trying to like be like, he's trying to make this a great week, and then there's like this Irish cover band, which I don't know, it's just a funny, it's a good like double back, like, we got you, Dane Harmon. Chang and Jeff got a good, it's a good back and forth. Favorite line from that scene, I think, is Chang says, "I pleasured that woman greatly." And Jeff says, "You look like you would have to." And Chang doesn't even like blink, doesn't phase him. But Jeff's got some good zingers that are like like disguised as like compliments, but like are actually like digs on a person.
Yeah.
I think that's one of my favorite like things about his character, is the way he can do that. And then kind of a deep line, but it's coming from Abed. It kind of comes across funny because he's kind of blunt with Britta, but there's a point, and I can't remember which scene it's in, where he's like, "Try to join the rest of us in reality, Britta." I can't remember what they're talking about, but I don't know if you remember what scene that's from.
Yeah. So they're talking about they're Abed and Troy's rat Fievel runs away, and so Britta goes, "Well, maybe Fievel went to go find his other rat friends," and Abed like puts his hand on her shoulder and goes, "Try to join the rest of us in reality, Britta."
Right. Okay, yeah, that's right. So I guess it's not like a deep line where like, oh, that actually makes you think, but at the same time, like coming from Abed, like that, it kind of hits, because like of all the people that like you could see, like kind of like Abed's obviously already shown his crazy side, like with him trying to mess with Troy and like, you know, being meta and like dressing up as Batman, like for that to come from him, it's just like, that sounds like something Britta should be saying to Abed, not vice versa. I think it's a great line. The whole ending sequence, like near the end of this episode, starting with like Abed singing "Somewhere Out There" when he's trying to find Fievel in the hallway, and then there's like a montage. It cuts to that with like showing Chang dancing with his wife again, and there's like an Irish like version of "Somewhere Out There." It's like Irish salsa "Somewhere Out There" cover. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Kind of bops a little bit, and then they also show like Shirley's speech. That's a great sequence, a great montage. I mean, I think montages are overused a lot in TV shows, but I think Community, when they do montages like that, Dane Harmon doesn't do that a lot. So when he does it, I think it is a really meaningful way of telling the story and like showing all these characters and kind of showing all these storylines and how they overlap. And really, like with this episode, I think that's one of the great things about it. And one of the reasons I like this episode a lot is like really every character gets a chance to like be in one of the storylines in this episode. Mm-hmm. And we kind of see them all overlap to some extent. Like it's not like the Halloween episode where they like are literally all like together, like in at once basically, and like all the storylines are together. But like we do kind of see that, like even though some of these storylines are occurring in different parts of the university and like at different times, like there is kind of some parallels with them where, you know, we're seeing these storylines kind of wrapped up. So I just think that's a great montage with like, you know, Abed and Troy honestly like sounding really good singing "Somewhere Out There," and then like it's already kind of like a emotional song, and like you get a really satisfying end to at least Chang and his wife getting back together, and then Shirley's speech working out with her and Pierce and the Brownies, which shout out to Shirley and Pierce in this episode. I think that's kind of a nice change of pace for Pierce to not be creepy Pierce in this episode. Mm-hmm. And like, we don't really get that with him again, with him and Shirley, because usually he's like kind of like rude to her and almost like harassing her. And in this episode, like we talked about it with the previous episode where he's just trying to help somebody in the group. But it really like, I kind of think that I like seeing that Pierce, and I hate that we don't see that. But him helping Shirley with like her speech is really kind of a heartwarming, I think, plot for this episode, just because we know how bad Pierce turns out to be later on and just how horrible of a person he really is treating Shirley. And we kind of get like a small glimpse of friendship in this episode. So I think it's a good episode. A lot of good lines. Sorry, I feel like I've been dominating the talk, but there's a lot of things I had to write down for this one because I just kept laughing, and it was a good episode. A lot of good moments.
No, and something you even said at the end with like the Shirley and Pierce thing too, where like it was nice to not see creepy Pierce, because they really could have like that, they could have went that angle, and like it would have been accurate to the character but it was nice just like that's something about this episode. Like I'm not sure how much I love this episode. Like it's probably for me, it's probably again like another 7 out of 10, closer to an 8 than a 6 for sure. But like something I felt like about this episode, like, oh, this is just like a nice episode. Like something about it was just very heartwarming. Like maybe like, the marriage being rekindled. Well, another cool thing that like doesn't happen, which I'm really glad about, is like Jeff at the end doesn't like try to take a pass at Britta or like, like it's not, nothing like that. Like Abed and Troy growing their friendship. Shirley and Pierce like good to each other. And something with the Pierce thing too is that I started like trying to do that, like the hand somebody a sandwich. Don't put your hand over them, but gotta like no, you just dropped the sandwich. Like you gotta hand them a sandwich. I was like that. I feel like that's actually kind of decent advice. And like it's like I'm giving somebody to something. I'm not trying to suppress anybody. I'm giving. And like
Yeah.
I like that. I actually liked kind of his advice for her. Orgasmically delicious. Like just everything about it. I just I felt like,
Here's brownie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Good stuff.
So yeah. For leading the class, I had Jeff in this one. I felt like all the characters honestly really worked. I thought all the characters had little good moments. So it was just kind of one of those where it was kind of a tie for me again. But in this situation, tie goes to the lead actor, and so I just went with Jeff on this one. Again, Jeff's in every episode, so you can always kind of go with him. He's obviously the lead, but
yeah, I think you could probably make an argument for any of these characters, and I could probably you could convince me of them. But since my initial thought watching this episode, answering this question, I'm going to break out from the 7. I got to go Chang. I mentioned it earlier, like we talked about Ken Jeong. Once again, just great acting in this episode by him. Like this probably is his breakout for the show. I mean, we had some really good scenes with him early on in the season, especially like the El Tigre Chino scenes. But like they were always like just like one scene. It's like per episode we got of him. And like this whole episode is like kind of about Chang. Like he gets like the main plot with Jeff. We start to get more background on his character, just some more depth on him versus just being like the crazy Spanish teacher, like which he still is. But like we get some more in depth like look as like why he's maybe kind of acting that way and just who he is as a person. Some really good fleshing out of his character. I think Jong has some really good delivery of his lines that he makes me laugh. Ken Jong, whatever he's in, it makes me laugh. But in this episode and just the show, Chang makes me laugh just with his lines and the things he says, the way he says them. I talked about it earlier, like his comedic timing, even like his like emotional, like not even like talking, just like his facial expressions and like his actions.
I noticed it was the first time they all sit at the lunch table, which obviously that's a frequent spot for the rest of the series. And then Dean's opening speech is through a boombox again, like it was in the pilot. And I just thought that was funny. And I was thinking to myself, like, oh, they honestly could have just had him speak over the intercom like he usually does, but they kind of put like it was kind of like the Jeff Sox thing with the last episode. Like they kind of did that for that bit so he can like show everybody, oh, this is in Virendale. It's like we're already Greendale. Which that's another like little funny Starburns thing is like Starburns also like every time Starburns like thinks he's got like a stinger, he always like looking around for approval and like, oh,
like, I mean, Starburns is not wrong, but like,
yeah. So I just like we're already Greendale, right? Like just looking around like, oh, what you got?
So behind this, there's a photo of Chang and his wife. They cut to whenever Jeff and Chang are talking in his office, they cut to like a picture of Chang and his wife. And there's like a post-it note that they wrote something. I don't know what he put on it. Like he put something on the picture of like a little bubble. And behind that photo of Chang and his wife, I noticed this when I was watching this and I had to pause it and go back to look again. There's like a photo of Jeff behind that picture of Chang and his wife. And it kind of looks like in like an About Me page that you'd like put in like, hey, my name is Jeff Winger. These are my hobbies. And it's either that or like Chang made like a report on Jeff of like who he is. Cause I couldn't read everything that's on it. Cause it's kind of just like back in the background. Like you see the picture of Jeff and like you can tell that it's about him and that there's some words on this piece of paper. I don't know if there's like somebody out there who's like cut down that frame to like analyze it, but I just thought that was odd that like, why does Chang have a picture of Jeff in his office? Kind of feels like a Easter egg, kind of like an indication of that Chang is crazy and that he's, trying to manipulate these students or something. I don't know. Thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe there's nothing to it. Maybe it's just a little fun thing that they threw in there, but thought it was interesting because I noticed that picture of Jeff in the background. And then I love the LT Gray poster behind Chang and behind his desk because it's like a bullfighter with a bull and then it says LT Gray. So like he's obviously either like somebody made that for him or he found a picture of a bullfighter and like he spray painted like LT Gray on it or painted LT Gray on it, like the words on there. But that I think that poster defines the character of Chang pretty well of just who he is. Also fun fact. I'm sure you caught this, but maybe not. This is the episode where my Zoom background came from that we can see right now. It's the empty Jeff spot, the empty spot when Pierce sees Jeff's stuff there and he goes to sit in the chair. So yeah, noticed that and thought that was kind of a fun little, hey, I know where that's from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sit there. That's me.
That's where I sit.
Yeah.
It's the chair. That's a good scene too. Like with Chevy Chase and his acting in that scene, trying to be Jeff. Like, I don't know. That's especially because like earlier on, Jeff steals Pierce's joke. Pierce kind of gets a little bit of his revenge on Jeff. Maybe not revenge really, but kind of does because he kind of gets a zinger, I think, back on somebody later.
Yeah. I
don't know if this probably just, I don't know what to do with this and maybe this can be cut out later, but so like that closing credits scene with like the water guns with Troy and Abed and Pierce, that made me think. So bear with me for a second. Story time. So back when I was in like kindergarten, or I think I was in like first grade, I was in the elementary school, a young kid. I went to this small school. It's like the end of the year, we had this like water gun fight, like the last day of school, which it sounds like a bad idea, and it was, but like that was kind of like the like reward thing the teachers let us do because it was nice outside at that point in May, and the teachers were like, "Hey, bring your water guns to school, have a little fight at recess on the last day, and like that'll be the last thing you do. Then you'll go home, like get on the bus and go home." So I had this water gun. It was like a cheap little Dollar General water gun that my mom had bought me for this fight, and it was just a little pistol thing. And for some reason, I had it with me, like on the bus or like at school. I don't know why I brought it with me, like before this day happens. Like it was like a week or two before the last day of school. And there was this kid on the bus who was like making fun of me, like teasing me about my water gun. Cause like it was just a small little plastic thing, like probably cheap gun. He had like a super soaker and he was a rich kid. So like he had all the nice water guns and stuff. And he was like teasing me about this gun and how tiny he was. And like, I wasn't bothered by it. Like I didn't care. But somebody I think must have like ratted him out, like another kid or the bus driver or somebody like heard him making fun of my gun and thought that he was bullying me and like told a teacher about it. And it's like he got in trouble for like bullying my water gun, which again, I didn't care. I really did not. It didn't bother me in the bit. Like I agreed with him. It was a stupid, pointless little gun. Like I was kind of not embarrassed by it, but I was like, yeah, this is dumb, but it's whatever. It's going to last like 5 minutes and we're done. So like his mom made him like apologize for making fun of my water gun. And she made him buy like a new water gun for me that was like better than the one I had, like to apologize or whatever, which I don't, looking back, like why did she make him do that? I don't know. That was kind of pointless. Like I didn't care. He could have just said sorry. And I would be like, all right, cool. But the funny thing about that was like the water gun that I like originally had, my tiny little water gun, actually ended up like being better than the one he bought me. Like it actually was kind of like cool. Like it actually ended up working pretty well. So I don't know. That story doesn't mean anything except for the fact that Pierce's little pistol actually ends up being like the winning gun in that fight. Reminded me of that story in my life. So
with his pepper water.
Yeah, pepper water. Why is that pepper water?
Yeah.
I did not use pepper water in my water gun fight, but definitely need to break that out someday, maybe.
Well, I was like, yeah. After that, I was like, it's kind of brilliant. Like I didn't think about it, but man, that'd work. No, that's funny. I like it. I'm not cutting it. Sorry, Ethan. That's gonna be on YouTube forever. I'm sorry.
I don't know what to do with that information. That is a story. You do with that what you want. But if that kid is listening to this podcast and he knows who he is, I just want you to know that I forgive you, and I'm sorry your mom made you buy me another water gun because that's kind of dumb too.
What's our takeaway here? Parents are stupid. Yeah, that's it. Crime doesn't pay. Yeah,
crime doesn't pay. And 100% of all fake gun incidents, the real victim is the person with the fake gun. Sorry, we're
Yeah.
getting ahead of ourselves. We can't get ahead of ourselves there.
No, but overall, like we talked about this episode, it's definitely a good like feel good episode. I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously, pretty much all the episodes end on like some sort of like sweet note or just very homey kind of feel. Like nothing ever ends like really disjointedly or anything like that. But for some reason, this episode in particular just like really worked for my emotions. I'm like, oh, I just felt so good about at the end of this one. Um, similar to you, I laughed a lot this episode. Again, I'd probably give it like 7.5, maybe an 8. But it was just a good episode, just enjoyed it. Just enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. I'd probably give it like an 8 out of 10. I think that there's enough like really just I don't know, good writing and like good lines, like funny lines in this episode. And then on top of like the wholesomeness, like you mentioned, like if it was just like the jokes, like this could be like an average episode. But for me, I think the fact that like it's a good combination of like good joke writing and then like also there's like a good payoff of like a lot of really good wholesome moments. We could see good like dynamic between Troy and Abed and Chang and Jeff. Like I think this is one of my favorite episodes, at least from season 1. I'd probably put this in like my top 3 from season 1. I just think it's a great episode overall. But a couple of things issues I had with the episode, small nitpicks, but something I would have marked in red. So there's a part where Annie is talking about, they're complaining about Chang. And she says that they've been trying to fire Chang for 3 years, but nobody wants his job. And when that line came across again, I was like, thinking about that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like for the point of the show, it makes sense. But like when you think about that realistically, how do they know that nobody wants his job? Because you have to fire him to be able to post his job. Like, hey, we're hiring a professor, but they obviously haven't fired him. So like, how do they know that nobody wants Chang's job? There's surely somebody out there that would take his job teaching Spanish. Like that's just such a, I don't know. I thought that was kind of a weird line, like a weird reasoning for why Chang is still there. But I mean, it's probably me just overthinking it. I guess just the logistics of that. Like, yeah, there's no way they know that nobody in the world wants Chang's job, and that's the reason they haven't fired him. Like, they could easily just fire him and find somebody else later, like, or have somebody fill in for him. But small nitpick, probably getting too far into the weeds. More of a minor or a more major nitpick with this episode for me is that I feel like Troy is kind of a douche. Maybe hot take, but I don't like Troy in this episode. I know there's kind of a good payoff at the end where he comes back and helps Abed out singing, but he's really, really like rude to Abed earlier on because he's like getting mad at Abed for bringing up the mouth or their, Fievel. And he's like telling Abed, like, can you not bring it up anymore? And like, hey, are you happy, Abed? And stuff. And like, I get that he's scared of mice and rodents, but I feel like he kind of is not like, it's very out of character for Troy to be that way. Cause I don't think he's a rude person like that. And I don't know where that comes from, but I just feel like he really kind of acts out of character. I don't know if you noticed that, if you agree or disagree. Maybe I'm getting.
No, I agree because like Troy is selfish, but he's not mean. Like he's self-centered, but he's not like rude or like douchey. I mean, that's kind of been Troy so far. Like in the last episode with not in episode 9, but I think it was in episode 8 with the whole Annie thing. Like he was very appreciative of what Annie was doing, but he's also very self-centered. And so it's like, yeah, he's not mean or he's not rude or any of those like outward things. He's just a lot more like self-focused. And so yeah, it is a little out of character.
I don't know, maybe not a big deal because again, there's a nice payoff at the end, so he comes back and redeems himself. But middle of the episode, Troy, I'm not a fan of. And one last thing, I got to ask you this. I'll get your opinion on this. Do you feel like this show, at least in this season, has relied too much on physical humor with Pierce? I only say that because in like 2 episodes before this, there's like the part where he like I think it's the one before this because he's hypnotizing Britta. He like falls over the drum set and like hurts his leg or whatever. And I think even like the episode with him and Vaughn like writing the song, I feel like there's a part where like he falls over something or like falls out of a chair. And then like this episode as well, he falls out of the chair when he's doing something. I think he's trying to pretend to be Jeff and he falls out of the chair. We talked about toilet humor on the show before and how we don't like how it works. but I feel like the physical, like, oh yeah, that guy got hurt. That's funny. I don't think that works for the show either. I don't know. What do you think? It's kind of cringy to me.
No, I don't like it either, especially in the way they use it, where it's like the dry kind, where well, we're skipping ahead a little bit, but you know, like the episode where Britta gets whipped by Troy's grandma, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's done well. Like I'm not laughing in that scene necessarily, but I think that's done well just by Troy's laugh reaction to it. And like Britta's trying to like not be in pain. And like I think the structure of that works. But like the way they use it with Pierce, where he's just like, oh, punch a drum set and oh gosh. And like I don't like it. And I get it. Like you want to kind of mix up the way you use comedy. And again, physical comedy can be good, you know, depending on how you use it. And I can see that where it's like they kind of want to mix it up a little bit, you know. But I agree. And I thought in my head, like, okay, is this like a reference to Christmas Vacation or something? Like him falling out of a chair, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't know. I don't think I've seen that movie in years, so I couldn't like recollect it in my mind. But I agree. It was. I'm kind of out on that.